Hi everyone, I'm just waiting for, there's a bit of hair sticking up. I'm just waiting for Fiona Cruickshank to join me. Now I know Fiona from Air Studios where she is a recording engineer. I don't know if that's the correct term, we can ask her, but she's going to join me today and hopefully talk about what inspired her to take on the role of recording engineer, how she got there, kind of amazing projects she's worked on, which there will be many, and and to just find out what she's been up to for the whole time while we've been in lockdown. Obviously, recordings are starting to happen again, which is really, really great news for everyone. And I think she's here, so let me just let her in and hopefully the screen will split nicely. Fingers crossed. Yeah. Oh, and we're matching.
Yes, Team Turquoise.
Fantastic. Oh, you haven't let me down.
The scariest bit was whether I could get Instagram to work.
Yeah, it's always the first time I did it as well. Neither of us had done, and we were a bit like, oh, how do we even start one of these?
Yeah.
So it was a little bit. We were like, oh dear, it's a bit amateur. Oh, you're looking fantastic.
Oh,
So
you too.
good to see you. I'm glad we're in a
Good,
nice
yeah.
shade of blue.
Blue, yeah.
As I was just introducing you and saying, so is the right term sound engineer, recording engineer? What would you say?
Yeah, either of those is good. Sound engineer, recording, mix.
Okay. Is that something you were always really passionate about? Is that something you fell into?
It was definitely, I've been passionate about it for quite a long time now. I was sort of doing the classical music route at school and played the oboe.
Oh, okay.
And then when I was about sort of 14-ish, I was taking piano lessons, and my teacher had a studio, sort of garage converted into a studio. And he was really good friends with Bob Moog and just had like walls of analog synths and all these kind of a few nice pianos, keyboards, Hammond organ, like a mixing desk, all this like gear basically. And I started going around there for my lessons and was just like, hang on, what are all the lights doing? I want to play with that.
These instead.
So he really sort of started to teach me a bit about signal flow and a desk and microphones and recording and different cables and all sorts of stuff like that. And he was the one that kind of brought it out in me, I'd say.
Okay. Oh, that's amazing. Because
Yeah,
I wondered if you had actually played an instrument at all or anything. Because
yeah,
obviously I see you at in Air Studios where you're pretty much based, but we don't usually get a chance to chat. It's sort of you're coming out
yeah.
the microphone. We're like, hi, how are you? And stuff.
Exactly.
So it is so interesting to find out your kind of route to where you are today. So did you do something like a Tonmeister course? Because I've got a young cousin who's currently doing a
Oh,
Tonmeister
brilliant. Yes,
course,
I
so I'm kind of hearing a bit about it now.
exactly. Yeah, I did it, and it's kind of it certainly was the best kind of sound engineering course in the country. But what was really good about it for me, and I know there are different ones out there now, but as I was an oboist and a singer and not really like a guitarist or a drummer, or like a lot of the other courses were about how to record your band really well and how to produce your own music, which is great.
Yeah.
But sort of composition and even performance, I used to be so terrified whenever I did any solo stuff on the oboe. I loved orchestra, but so it was good for me because I wanted to continue with my oboe studies, but and orchestration and all that, like kind of normal music degree stuff.
So you were able to
And
combine that
yeah,
together.
exactly. So you sort of start off in the first year doing a music degree alongside maths and physics and engineering and all that kind of, you know.
Yeah, he did mention something about it was like doing a physics degree.
The first year is really hardcore as well. What year is he in?
I think he's just the year he's just done. It was a placement year where
Ah,
he So I think it must be third or something like
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
Um, and
finished.
it was great because he was actually based at the Guildhall School of Music. So obviously, and me being in the Barbican, that was quite handy. But obviously, it hasn't been there for a good 4 months. So,
Sad. I'm sorry. So that's the other kind of great thing about the Tom Meister course is that the third year is in the industry and you spend a whole year working. So that's when we would have first met when I did my placement year at Air, and that's how.
oh, do you remember what we recorded or anything from that first year? Was it all a bit like, oh my God, I mustn't touch that wire, I mustn't
Yeah,
like.
it was quite scary, and the responsibility of the precious equipment.
Yeah,
As you say, yeah, these microphones cost 15 grand each. Just
yeah, I've
yeah,
heard that it's like wow that the equipment, and I always wondered how many miles of cabling are going, right? Because whenever you go into a studio, you're just like assaulted by these spaghetti junctions of color coded. Well, and I thought, well, I wonder how actually if you stretch those out end to end, I wonder how far
yeah,
we end up getting.
yeah. Good question.
Oh, but do you have any particular memories from the beginning? Is it one of those things where it's really so much about learning on the job and everything's a little bit different?
I think I was just so wowed by everything. I was certainly super keen, and as you can imagine, especially being a runner, like the hours are quite hardcore because
Mm.
we're involved in a lot of different setups and things. But certainly some of the big things that I did in my placement year, one of them was being a runner on a session with Dario Marianelli, who I was a huge fan of, kind of.
Oh,
Yeah, so for me that was like, meeting a rock star.
yeah, was it fangirl
Yeah,
moment?
I
I know how that feels when you end up.
was like, oh my god. I've worked loads since, and he's so brilliant, But like, I do remember the first session and being super nervous. And similarly, I worked on Batman that year. I think it was Dark, um, with Hans and Chris Nolan.
Oh,
Uh,
fantastic.
Again, just as a runner, just helping with setups and changeovers and making everyone tea
I
and
was going to say
you
you
know.
get to do the tip, which is actually quite
Yeah.
like, so Marinelli, what would you like to drink? Tea, coffee.
Anything. Yeah, it's nice because you get to speak to everyone as a runner, and
Yeah,
then you a bit more because, as you say, when you're moving a mic or someone's headphone breaks or something, you can
yes,
sit out and sort of have a chat, whereas now I'm a bit more trapped
yeah,
behind.
the desk.
Yeah,
Yeah, 'cause usually I always wonder how it works because obviously within the first, I suppose, half an hour, 45 minutes of any session, there's always a lot of setting up and pretty much nothing ever really gets put in, into the can. It's all about levels,
mm,
my headphones aren't working,
yeah,
and then suddenly someone comes running out and then the whole section loses click and stuff. And I always wondered about like who's, is it somebody's turn or something? But it's obviously all part and parcel of whose job
yeah,
it
exactly. Sort of
just
responsible for
yeah,
running out, especially now. Actually, that's something that's really changed in the post-COVID recording,
yeah. So have
where
you done some work since we've been in lockdown? What was that like?
yes, so now Air is open again. I think Abbey Road is as well,
Yeah,
which was it was so brilliant to be back, but also quite strange because there's a bit more of a divide between control room and live area.
yeah,
The way that they've set it up to keep it safe is that all the musicians come in kind of through their own entrance, and you're all given a number at the start of the day. When you go into the hall, each sort of chair and stand is numbered, and that's your little kind of area.
yes, that's
Yeah,
where you're supposed
and
to
where you're
just
supposed to kind of stay apart from breaks and going to the loo and stuff. And you're all 2.5 meters apart, and they're going to stick with that for a while, despite the
yeah. I
new.
think that's fair enough.
And
Yeah,
on the engineering side of things now, we have one person whose job it is to kind of be in the live area, make any changes like headphones and mics, but they don't come in the control room. And the people in the control room never
so
come in the live area. So we're trying to sort of minimize
any crossover contact.
Yeah, exactly. Which is sad because you're just standing at the glass like, hello.
Okay. It's like a fishbowl, isn't it? Sometimes
Yeah,
it's nice when you, because I've gone into the control, box before, and you listen to a take, or you say
yeah,
hi, or if Jake Jackson's on or something, I'll come in and say hi. But yeah, to have suddenly the divide and just be a disembodied voice for the
yeah,
orchestra suddenly must feel a little bit like everybody's in containment, but
yeah.
I guess it's the at least
Hang
things.
out. Yeah, I mean, the important thing is that they're keeping everyone safe. So, you
Yeah.
know, me being social, we'll just have to wait. And
That's right. Yeah, can't even text during the session because you're not allowed to have your phone on.
yeah, waving.
But it's been great for you to go back, because what did you? Obviously, we were sort of. We're talking what, a good 3.5 months
Yeah,
without any kind of recordings possible. What did you end up doing with your time?
I was quite lucky because at the very beginning of lockdown, I was still working on the new Little Mermaid film. So Disney have
I
um,
can't wait.
coming, and just before that, we'd been recording all the songs and the orchestra and the band for the songs, and I was on that as an editor. So
Oh,
literally
right.
together all the many kind of layers of band and orchestra, and making sure everyone kind of was in time, not gridded, but just the groove was right and the best takes were in, and that kind of job. So I was very lucky that for the first 2 weeks of lockdown I was working on that in my kind of spare room studio here, and it didn't really feel like anything was happening because I was just doing the same thing. Yeah, and then all of a sudden all of the work kind of disappeared and postponed, and
Yeah. So
so
do you have a setup? Like, would you work usually at home on something like that, or would that be something that you'd have done in the studio?
yes, I do quite a lot of editing from home, and I do have a setup here for kind of stereo mixing or editing that's mixing for lower budget stuff, or as I say, editing because you just need a pair of headphones and a good rig, so you don't
Okay.
have to pay necessarily for a room. Although on those sorts of gigs, I would usually probably be in the mix room or in a little adjoining room, so the team kind of likes to stay together. But
Yeah.
that's
Because
a
there's,
lot.
yeah, behind the booth, but there's other little rooms.
Yeah,
I mean, one time I did run through. I don't know if you'd have been on, but I was feeling really sick, and actually, it was a Bill Ross session, and it was some kind of film. I ended up missing the next 2 days of it, and I had the quickest way out was running through the control booth and getting to that disabled toilet to throw up. And apparently, somebody said Rita Ora was on the screen. She was in this film, and she was running, and had quite a colourful hair do film. And so she ran across, and suddenly behind everybody else, I came running through the
they're
booth.
all.
And I said, "Oh, I'm so sorry." I felt so embarrassed, but
Mm.
I thought this is preferable to being sick in the middle of the recording session.
Oh,
It is. It's like a little mini world back there, seeing.
yeah, and you haven't
Like,
really been kind of upstairs to the mix rooms, have you?
no,
Yeah,
no, I
yeah.
haven't.
That's the sort of funny thing that I don't realize. Upstairs there are more rooms purely for mixing, same sort of
Yeah, no,
booth.
maybe one day I should just
I was
like,
going to say, yeah, we should give you the full tour at some point.
yeah, we want to see what's going on upstairs. It's, yeah, the most I've been is into the balcony, where I assume those mattresses there are not for musicians to have a nap. That is obviously an acoustic.
Yes, but they work for both. It's very
Yeah, in the break, there was sort of people sort of collapsing on them, but
yeah,
has to be. I don't think that anybody's really thinking about us having a little kit. It must be to soak up
yeah.
some kind
Because
of.
the balconies and the steps are all wooden and very reflective, so it's to try and sort of deaden down a
Ah,
little bit of the reflections, which is why we kind of lay them out against the steps.
I see. Ah, okay. Now I know. And
Yeah,
obviously, there's a lot of. I mean, it's a busy-ish junction actually, where the church, where Air Studios is located, and of course, you've got the hospital just down the road. how many takes do you think have ever been kind of wrecked because you
That's a really good question. Do every film, or every hour.
them all up, these kind of sirens going
Yeah,
across there, because you have to like, oh, hang
worse
on,
than others as well. You're
stop.
like, yeah, something's happened today.
Yeah. I guess it's almost impossible to not have some kind of sound. I mean, obviously Abbey Road, the main studio is under, it's underground, but still, I remember massive rainfall. You do hear it, and things like that. So it's, yeah, unless you're in a completely sealed environment, I guess that's what you kind of have to work on. Did you
Yeah.
ever do you ever have to control the click track as well? Is that something you do?
Yes. Yeah, riding the click is another one of.
Oh, okay.
Yes, and the headphones. So it's normally the engineer that does that, although American engineers don't tend to do it. But yeah, usually the engineer will be kind of looking after all your headphones and hopefully, or attempting to follow the score, only just to you hope that there's not suddenly a quiet bit over the page. Yeah,
Yes.
following along this like loud, then you're like, oh god, no. So it's not.
For anyone that doesn't know, obviously musicians have to wear these huge headsets with a tempo going, so it's just like all, like this all the whole time through in your ear, which sometimes is it really, A, you get headphone hair at the end of the day, and B, sometimes it's just when you've had this in your head all day long, it's like, oh gosh, it's quite, you feel like your whole body is just pulsing. But it is, I always think, gosh, that's quite a responsibility. I find it I'd be very stressed if it was me, but obviously you guys know exactly what you're doing.
Well, it's just hopefully practice makes it less scary, but I totally agree with you that yeah, that part is so important as well for you guys to be comfortable and to be able to play well.
Yeah, I guess so, because you're going to get different, like mostly the brass will say we're not getting enough click.
Yeah,
Of course, the sound that they're creating is so loud that they can't sort of hear, and it's great that it can just all be controlled, because they're like, oh, does everybody want more click? And most of the time strings will just be going, no,
yes.
can't cope with
We
any.
have separate feeds as much as possible for strings, wind, bass, harp, anyone in the booths that might want to hear something different.
Yes,
The
true.
or yeah.
And then I like it when you have terms like they go, oh, we're getting click bleed through, because when it's like maybe it's such a quiet take, and you still need to have click, but you're sort of hoping that nothing just comes through
Yeah,
actually into the room. I
because
guess.
it's really gutting when you get to a mix. It's like, oh, this is beautiful, but you could just hear the. Thankfully, there is software now to remove that, but it's not a very fun job, as you can imagine.
I bet it takes ages.
Yeah,
Yeah, I know how, certainly when, for example, we do our LSO live recordings at the Barbican, and obviously they're taken from live performances. And the guy who produces them says we can take out a level of noise. Actually, you can almost remove certain coughs at certain frequencies, but there are some frequencies where you just really cannot
yeah,
take the
can't
intensity. We end up, even though it's a live performance, we may end up patching something because someone's just gone like, "Ah!" like in the middle of full oboe solo, something. So I imagine there's quite a lot of work for you guys in a post-production.
yeah, and at least in sort of film world, there might be some drums or other pre-records,
Mm.
that will cover that up. But as you say, certainly in the more classical record stuff that I do with orchestras, that's like a huge part of the time.
Just cleaning it up.
Yeah, especially it depends where you record, but the last sort of album I did like that was up in Liverpool, and you could hear the seagulls outside and the a couple of Scouse ladies like having a really loud conversation, just me
No.
on an orchestra.
Oh dear.
With the isotope software, I don't think. Other noises.
So what are your sort of favorite parts of the kind of day-to-day job when you're in the studio? Oh,
Oh,
we've
sorry,
lost.
say that again.
I said, what is your favorite part of the job? What are part of your favorite things during the day if you're working?
Oh, that's tough. I mean,
Or is it more
that's
about
really
the
hard.
results? Is it more that you just feel
No,
like
the
trying?
actual recording process is probably my favorite part of my job, you know, sitting there in front of the desk, as you say, and that sort of excitement in the first half an hour when you know that things are going to need a little bit of adjustment, and then hearing you all play that music for the first time, having heard the demos and
Hmm.
you know the synth stuff, and then hearing you play it
Oh,
feel, you know, pretty magic. I feel so
you tend
fortunate.
to get some kind of computer generated mock-up
Yeah.
of what it's gonna, how it's gonna be. Okay,
Yes, usually yes.
so
uh,
it's probably a bit robotic and
exactly, the idea is there, but and you just can't hear the sort of harmony properly, and there might not be that much sort of in the dynamics, and yeah, you sort of just get used to going, it'll be roughly those notes but better.
okay. Oh, that's good to know. Excellent.
Yeah, it's always, you know, and that's a really nice thing as well, being in the room with all these clients who suddenly go, oh my god, like,
Yeah, it's so nice when they, because often they will, and I suppose we take it for granted because it's something that happens all the time. But I've often seen the client will come and go, oh my God, just to hear the music kind of come to life,
yes,
even through the first kind of read through. I don't think that it's something that they've prepared for, but
yeah,
haven't really understood the kind of impact that it will have just
mm,
suddenly played by so many people. So I think that must be a really lovely part of
yeah. And
seeing
it's
the client happy for sure.
sitting in front of an orchestra and watching you all, but the huge sound, you know, for people that aren't used to being around musicians, and even me, you know, a lot of people end up sort of crying or getting really
Oh,
emotional because it's just such a big thing. I don't know.
well, I guess with clients as well, obviously sometimes if it's huge projects that are brought in by Disney or Pixar or Marvel, it's slightly different because it's much more of a day to day for them. But for clients that just bring their own projects, I mean, they always call them vanity projects. That just sounds kind of rude. I know. They've brought something that they've poured their heart and soul into. They've probably saved up a lot of money, got sponsorship to be able to come to London and record.
Yes.
So that for them must be, and they think, gosh, this is my whole life's work. And then to sort of hear it for the first time must actually be quite
And
special. I
with you,
probably, I
but
probably forget, I probably forget that when it's just, for us, it's just the normal kind of day-to-day work that we're doing. Are there any particular things that you were so happy you were working on?
oh my god, loads. All
Some
that's
of the big, some of the big films that we air
some of the
and
big films. One of them was, again, Dario, sorry, um, Jane Eyre. That
oh, okay.
was like sublime and made me cry. Um, Gabrielle Yared and Alberto Iglesias, they, you know, as our
Yeah.
favorites. We've had so much fun with Pat Doyle.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, he's such a legend, isn't he? In
He
every
is
way.
a character.
Um, he's amazing. One of my sort of engineering sort of pinch me moments was did they made a film of the Romeo and Juliet ballet with
Oh, okay.
Opera House,
Yeah.
and you know, recording the music for that was just like next level when they started playing Dance of the Nights, or you
Oh,
know,
yeah.
pieces that are so well
You,
known.
yeah, that are so well known.
Yeah, but it just, I don't know, I'd never heard that live before, so
Yeah. Oh, and
just
you worked on Brave, didn't you? Because I
yeah,
saw on Twitter. Yeah,
yeah,
that must be going back quite a few.
that would have been one of the early ones. That
Okay.
was more
Yeah.
like yours.
Oh.
Dusting the hair dye in the breaks.
Well, something I really remember from that was we did have some sort of TV screens up with the, so I can't really say cartoon because that seems to sort of lessen it, but obviously the film
Yeah.
up there. There were a few moments where it wasn't quite finished yet, which is quite common, obviously, for when, there will be things
Yeah.
that are not quite last minute. And there were some scenes where Merida, obviously the main character, the big bushy orange hair, and she was still bald because they hadn't quite added, finishing touches to hair. I mean, I remember stuff like this happening in Harry Potter and Star Wars, where suddenly it cut to hand drawings, and you're sort of like, "Hello,
Yeah.
But obviously they had timed, and we could still record. But I do remember in The Brave thinking, yes, she looks rather different with a bald head, actually. Did you do, because Patrick Doyle did the first Thor film as
Yeah.
well? Did
Yes.
you do that as well? Oh, how much do we wish that Chris Helmsworth had come to the recording?
I know. That's a shame, isn't it? The actors don't often come.
Yeah, well,
Yeah,
managed to collect quite a few.
you and Abbey Road had some good ones.
But unfortunately, in that case, it was like, oh, damn, he's not here.
Oh, we'll have to try and get another one.
And I think, and Cinderella was another great one that we did with Patrick Doyle. I
Yeah.
really enjoyed that. Some beautiful music in
Yeah.
that.
Big waltzes, and he's just made for that. It was really brilliant. Anytime he collaborates with Kenneth Branagh,
Yeah, it's sort of magic.
Yeah, exactly. They really bring out the best and the fun in each other. It's
Yeah. Oh, it must be so fun to see, because I always think there must be so much banter going on in the booth as well, and also when because the times when I've gone in to listen to what's happening on things in Air and in Abbey Road,
Mm.
it is so interesting to see, say, the director watching it back with music and then giving their ideas, and saying, oh, that really works, or actually that's sort of taking something away from what
yeah,
the shot should be about. And it's always like, oh, it's just kind of like a little glimpse into their mind, and it's not just a case of just, oh, right, here's the music, slap it onto the film.
oh, exactly. It's a really big part of the process, isn't it? Because I think we all probably feel quite protective over the score, but then sometimes, as you say, you hear their idea and you're watching it and you're like, oh yeah, see what you mean.
Yeah, it's funny because you really have to sort of give, because I imagine you guys as a team
Mm.
are giving your opinions as well of what kind of works, or perhaps we could perhaps do crescendo, whatever.
Yeah,
And and it doesn't, just because they're directing film doesn't mean they necessarily kind of understand the complexities of what you can offer. So it's, are people, are people you work with generally nice clients?
yes.
Really.
Yeah, they actually are generally nice, because that's the question that people always want to ask you, is like, who was nasty, who was bad? And I'm like, I can never remember. Honestly.
Yeah.
It happens so infrequently that
Yeah.
I really just, I don't know, maybe I just squish it down immediately, but it doesn't stick in my mind at all. Most people are lovely, or some people are very focused and kind of intense, but professional. I don't know how to describe it. Like, not everyone obviously turns up and wants to be matey and chatty.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean.
They sort of respect everyone in the process, and they're giving their ideas in a kind of, as you say, respectful kind of professional way, and it feels like a team effort. And yeah.
Yeah. And do you guys have to really, because I always wonder how you guys manage it time wise, because there are times when we're in the studio recording and everyone's going like, oh, gosh, kind of, we haven't got through it. I mean, how do you, are there times where you just have to chivvy things along a little bit because too much time has been spent on one particular thing, and then there's a little bit of a worry that you won't quite finish?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you kind of go into the session with an idea of firstly a running order, and then kind of what you want to get done in the first half, or depending on how many sessions you've got. And then, as you say, I sort of start to work out after the first 40 minutes, say, like, right, okay, we need to be spending about this long on each cue. And unfortunately, some sessions, especially kind of TV stuff, will have loads of music and not much time, and you are looking at kind of 2 takes.
Yeah, one take and the safety.
Yeah, exactly. Or 1 change and then you're moving on, and it feels quite mean to be like, I'm really sorry. Next,
Fine, on to the next one.
That's great, I can fix that. Blah blah blah.
Yeah, well, yeah. You don't need someone to go, oh, I just played a wrong note. No, that's fine. We can fix that.
I know, exactly. Yeah, wrong notes, maybe not, but if you got it in one of the 2 takes, then we're all good.
Yes, it's amazing what you guys can do, because sometimes it'll be like, oh, that where everyone's like, oh no, we've got that, we can mix it together. Like, oh wow, this is like great. It's just, well, I guess that's that's what you guys have the massive skill for, is to be able to put together and I was just thinking, oh, that's a really long, laborious process to have had to listen to everything. But does everyone who does jobs in the booth, have they all come from a sort of classical music background, or not necessarily? Do you need to be able to read music? Like, do you need to be able to read a score?
Not everyone can. Not
okay, yeah.
Yeah, can. And I guess it really helps now because everything is, as you say, so strictly marked in terms of tempo and time, and there's a giant bar count on a screen, so they can write things down, is based on the bar count they can see rather than.
Okay. They do it in a mathematical.
Yeah, exactly. I find it so helpful. I can't imagine.
Yeah.
Not being able to read a score and kind of get an idea for what you're going into before you start. In a way, because you could look at the score and go, "Oh, right."
And kind of what you're about to hear. Yeah. The way the lines are shaped and stuff.
And what you need to listen out for, and solos you might need to help pick out, or kind of things like that. But yeah, a lot of engineers have a more sort of rock and roll background, I guess, and so I guess film music is a massive crossover, isn't it? So
yeah, true. And there's often many pre-records as well with a kind of band or something already. It's not necessarily a sort of classically based kind of thing that we're doing. I quite like it when we have a whole mix. I always get really disappointed when they say, oh, how are we happy with the mix? And people are just like, oh, we want click only. And I'm a bit like, oh, I was enjoying it.
Sometimes I'm like, surely it would help.
It's definitely great the first couple of times, because then you get an idea of what the track is about or something. And, but I suppose for absolute clarity for us, just to hear the click is always essential and paramount, I suppose. I just wanted to ask you about, obviously in the last 3 or 4 months, you'll have seen loads of kind of home recordings and things like that coming out. How do you feel about that? And when you hear something that someone's done on their phone, are you, as a professional recording engineer, thinking like, oh, that just sounds something, or like, oh, I wish they had a microphone, blah, blah, blah? Or is it just
like, oh my God, that actually sounds good. Someone did say to me, he was kind of asking me advice on mics for a bass, an acoustic, double bass. And he was saying, I bet you're really looking forward to us all coming back and having opinions on, like, oh, well, when I did it myself,
yeah,
and I put it here, and that sounded really great, So I'm just waiting for that to happen. Everyone's going to come in and
be an expert.
Be an expert, yeah. But I think like all of these videos everyone's been doing have sounded so great, and we did one with Air.
Yeah, that was fantastic.
That the accounts department had sent, as you say, that just was on your phone, or something that an engineer had done and kind of done it with all the gear, all the like most professional high tech stuff, and you could put it all together and it was great. So
yeah, I think there's Definitely with those split screen things, there was kind of safety in
Mm,
sure. I mean, I very much was like anyone who said, "Oh, can you record this?" And I was a bit like, "No, I've only got my phone." And interestingly, a friend got a microphone and said they did a sort of blind test of recording something with and without, and ended up the one with the microphone wasn't as good as just just using the phone.
yeah.
But I just wondered if it was something that when you were at home, you know, in your professional capacity, just thought like, gosh, can't wait to get back into the recording studio so people can just sound slightly more flattering.
Yeah, I suppose after a while the charm will be lost of, things being homemade.
Home recordings.
Um, yeah, and I can understand. I think a lot of musicians have found it quite stressful, this pressure to record themselves, and there's so much suddenly to think about that isn't just the performance.
Mm.
Like, how's my level, and am I recording it on the right track at the right sample rate at the right.
Yeah, it is. It's quite well, especially when you're just not used to doing it. I mean, the first time I played something through either my phone or my iPad, and I thought, oh, that sounded quite good, and I played it back, and I thought, hello, I thought unflattering, and it's yeah, it in a way it's pushed people a bit out of their comfort zone, I think, isn't it? And people have really needed to have, you know, music and perform
Yeah,
for others. And that, if that's the only way that was possible, there's very few people who have a really good setup
yeah.
at home. You have to be a real kind of sound geek, I suppose, if it's not your profession, but to have a level of equipment which you would be really, really happy to sort of expose yourself to
Well,
play.
that's, isn't it? It's just so exposed, and I think again, a friend was saying it takes them much longer to record anything for anyone because they're going through the takes, as you say, and worrying about, is this good enough? Do I need to replace this bit? And you just feel so exposed compared to in a studio, usually when there's another opinion at least to kind of
Yeah.
put your mind at ease a bit.
Because someone's there saying we need to do repeat bar 50 to 55, or if you're like, oh, I wasn't sure about that, and somebody goes, oh no, that absolutely sounded fine, or we already have it,
Exactly.
it just makes you feel a little bit better about yourself and knowing that it's, you know, if you've had the okay from someone, then you're kind of on the right track.
Mm.
Oh, okay, that's interesting. Can you think of any do you prefer to sort of work with the bigger orchestra, or there must be times where you really work with a very small groups
Yeah,
at Air?
definitely. I really like both. I think it's kind of an interesting engineering challenge, maybe the smaller the group.
Okay.
And it kind of, I don't know, like a quartet is always a very fun challenge, working on image and sound and balance, and especially again now, I've done a quartet since lockdown and everyone has to be so spread out, so where we would usually rely on like maybe a pair of mics to get most of our sound and kind of something more natural, as if you're standing in front of the quartet, now they're really far apart, and
Yes.
when do things don't quite work as you expect them to. So
Yeah, I can imagine. But in a way, because I wonder if you normally, if you record a quartet, would they sit pretty much as close as they would in, say, a concert?
yeah, almost.
Okay. So, and each
Well,
person would have
up them and
their
then away.
own. So, but they would all have their own mic.
Yeah,
Okay. But I imagine in that case, there's a lot of crossing over the sound into.
yeah, I'd have a few different pickups sort of from various distances, I suppose, like to have a main pair that's still quite close but not like a close mic, and then a sort of more roomier pair.
Okay.
Then, as you say, I'd still have a close mic on everyone, especially for film stuff, but then you're balancing between them, and bringing up a bit of a close mic maybe to help in the balance if you're missing something.
Yeah. Ah, it always makes me laugh when say the orchestra's set up and we're doing a few, you know, runs of things and they're balancing and someone comes out very seriously and comes and turns turns the mic that's nearest you away or moves it back a bit, and you're sort of like, thanks.
Oh,
You probably notice everyone always laughs and stuff. Like,
yeah, of course.
it was me.
So awkward, isn't it? Honestly, what that'll be is like, okay, I've got loads of the firsts, but I don't have enough seconds, or you know.
Yeah, it's fine. It's just always really funny.
But it is quite funny.
You know, as soon as somebody runs out of the box, everyone's sort of like,
Yeah.
where are they doing? What are they off to? And then they come up to you and they just pull your microphone away, and you're just like,
Why is it always like the front desk of violas? You know, their mic often breaks, and they're always like, "Oh yeah, pick."
oh no, I know the sort of, yeah. Have there only been any massive recording disasters like, oh, I forgot to press record or something, or forgot to save?
Oh, I've had massive where the computer crashed and
Oh,
we lost like the whole thing just died, and then the hard drive didn't come back when I rebooted. And I was just like, oh my gosh, we've just lost 4 hours. Oh god, you know.
yeah.
Feeling. But thankfully we have some very clever technical engineers at Air who restored the hard drive. And
Oh, thank God, you must feel. And even though when it's not your fault, you must feel like,
oh yeah, so awful. You still feel that sort of like you're the guardian of the data or something, and you let all these people down.
yeah, and especially, yeah, and it's all been done, and you know, we all know, you know, this session costs a lot of money, a lot of time, and a lot of effort, and you think, you know, I always there's quite often a sort of computer, not a crash, but there'll often be a moment where they're going, sorry, can we just wait a second, you know, something's happening.
Now, like almost the software can't keep up with the rest of us.
Oh,
you know, just
I always wonder if someone's just nipped out for a cup of tea or something.
no.
Like, yeah, sorry, we're having some software issues here. It's like
The assistants don't leave to get the, you know, don't get to leave their chairs very often. The people running Pro Tools have like the strongest bladders in London. The team brought to them, they don't leave. They are stuck.
I see. All right. And how many studios are there at Air? It's the main studio, isn't it? And then there's like a smaller one at the back.
Have you ever been in that one?
I have actually, and it takes a sort of chamber-sized orchestra or something.
In COVID times, because everyone's more spread out, but usually takes up to sort of 40, but that's pushing it. But it's really good for chamber strings or smaller kind of orchestral ensembles or any sort of band. You know, if you're doing more of a jazz ensemble or a rock band or something with sort of chamber woodwinds or a big band, or you know, it's great for that. And it's
pop band coming in, don't you? Yeah. I remember seeing George Michael there once.
Yes, so he used to work in, there's 2 mix rooms upstairs as well, and he used to work in one of those a lot, and they each have vocal booths, so he'd be writing in there and singing.
Yeah, because I was thinking, that's definitely George Michael. And I think I was just so taken aback that I didn't even sort of go up and go, you know, my usual kind of manner. But
yeah, you're good at that. I'm not very good at that.
I just have no, I think a lot of people have just said to me, I can't believe that you would dare to ever speak to these people. And I was just say, look, they're just people.
Yeah, that's so true.
You know, no one's actually ever said no, because I always think if I said, oh, could I have your autograph, which it used to be obviously 20 years ago when I first started, and now obviously it's kind of like selfies. And I always think if someone sort of says, oh no, then I'll just be like, yeah, sure, no problem.
Yeah.
But no one ever does. They always seem really pleased.
Yeah.
And it's just sort of, I don't know, I suppose I'd be pleased that somebody would acknowledge that that I think that person is great. I mean, I wouldn't sort of bother somebody if I didn't like them. If someone came in and worked with us and it was an actor or something that I didn't like, or a composer I didn't like, then I just wouldn't bother. But if it's someone that I'm genuinely excited about, then I think, why not?
Who are you most starstruck by?
I don't know. Oh gosh, starstruck. Well,
Mm,
people like I remember being very starstruck by Vivienne Westwood, but that wasn't in a recording studio. That was at a rehearsal she came to.
wow.
But I think probably a lot of the time during the sort of Star Wars ones, just because I'm fairly new to the orchestra and I was not a particularly confident person. So this would have been at Abbey Road, and I went up that long staircase up to the top.
Mm-hmm.
They're the sort of they have a little green room if you like, and a lovely Anthony Daniels C3PO ended up having a massively long chat with me and narrating through. There was a scene that was playing in there that we'd obviously just done. It must have been a break, and he just talked me through it in the voice, and I was just like, I can't believe this is happening. I can't believe this is happening. But I don't know. I just have a laugh. I mean, even I did actually say to George Clooney, I went into the box and I was waiting because it's also about picking your moment. I
Yeah.
think if you go and disturb somebody when they're right in the middle of something, then they're obviously not going to be that thrilled. But he was talking about the last scene that had happened. And then they stopped, and actually, someone came up to me and asked me if I wanted a tea or a coffee. So they obviously thought I was, I don't know, part of the engineering team. And I was like, oh, I'm fine. And then when they stopped talking, I just went up to George Clooney and I said, oh, hello. And I think he probably clocked that I was in the orchestra. And I said, I wondered if you'd like to have your photo taken with me.
Yeah.
I just thought I have to say it like that because I have to make him laugh about it. He did really laugh, and
Good.
we had our picture taken. But I thought I'm not going to be one of the million people who says, "Oh, George Clooney, can I please have my photo with you?"
Yeah,
I just
exactly.
your photo taken with me.
You're the other rock star. Come on.
No, not at all. But most people always say to me, God, I can't believe you dare. But in the end, we are working with these people,
Yeah.
and I think it's a nice way to show that you are enthusiastic about the project,
Mhm.
and that you're at the end, you want them to come back and bring their next film and all that. So
Yeah, and it's
but
nice
to get
to
to chat to them.
collaboration like that, you know.
But you can have a good chance to in the booth to have a good chat with them often, I imagine.
Yes, but then because you've been working so much, it sort of feels weird then to be like, so before you go,
Can I have my photo taken with you? So-
I never, but one day.
Oh, so do you like there's been a lot of video game recordings these days
Mm.
there, and is that something that you're particularly interested in, or are you a secret gamer? Is that
I, I'm not. I mean, as a teenager, I was more into that, and I haven't had to. Well, I sort of know that I don't have time for that because I would just get right back into it, and my life would be on. Do you know what I mean?
I'm a very addictive
Yeah,
person. I know
exactly.
that I'd just be there at 3 a.m.
Don't
But
do.
yeah.
You will, it will take over your life. But I've always really enjoyed the game projects. I think
Yeah.
as well, I guess it's the same with film, but when that team come to you, it's been like their baby for 2 or 3 years, and then you're kind of joining in on the triumphant finish.
Yes.
It's always really fun.
And they're usually quite geeky
Yeah.
about it and just so enthusiastic. And I think when we first got a game project, it was all a bit like, gosh, computer games. Because from what I remember, it was all very like tinny music on things, very, very repetitive,
Mhm.
metallic sounding. And suddenly video games have just taken on this huge sound world,
Yeah.
symphonic, proper symphonic music. But I want when you're in the box, and we're recording stuff like that, do you have any imagery at all to reference?
For some of it, yes. So there are parts of the game called cinematics, which are those like little cutscenes where it shows you a part of the story, and then you go into the next kind of part of the game. So we have the cinematic little chunks, but for most of it, you're just doing it blind, and it's so clever the way they work it all out. It as in like these chunks of kind of loopable material that is also, you can layer it up, or it sounds good just having 2 parts playing, or it sounds good having the 5 parts. Like I think they just have like a mega Excel spreadsheet somewhere.
It is incredible, isn't it? Because And we often have to do little chunks where it's like you've won the level,
Exactly, success or fail. The sort of
or
like,
then the one if you lost is
yeah,
usually a bit minor key, you know, a bit sad, but it's triumphant if you've won. It always makes me laugh when you suddenly have to do these tiny little, is it stingers? Sometimes they
yeah,
say we
yeah.
need to record these little stingers and stuff. But I just wondered what if you guys, had anything to actually watch, because it's sometimes it's very obvious when the game is like, I don't know, a Star Wars related game, so you think, okay, I've got an idea of what it actually is. But at other times, we're musicians, or when you've got a job where it takes a lot of your time, you probably haven't played computer games, and you're probably not someone who ends up having a lot of
Yeah.
spare time. So they're talking about a computer game, and you're sort of like, I don't know about that, but
But as you say now, I think because it's one of those things that is harder to, what's the word, kind of pirate. Like it's harder for people to rip games and steal it and then share it on the internet. So they are still, I don't know, there's such high quality now, as you say, visually. When you see, I was watching like an advert the other day, I was like, is that not a real, that's not a real person, The
yeah, it's
graphics
quite
are
amazing, isn't
insane.
it?
And similarly with the sound, they, as you say, go all out now. So when you're
Awesome.
starting a game, they kind of describe to you their sound world, and there's a lot of reference tracks for, the kind of sound they want from the music and how it will fit in with the sound effects and that kind of thing. But yeah, as you say, you don't really get to see the visuals. They might explain what's going to happen there.
Hmm.
All these parts are sort of like being worked on separately in great detail, and then don't come together until the last bit.
Yeah, absolutely. I can imagine. I sometimes I think, God, I'd love to play that game. It just has, but I know I just can't. I
Yeah.
just can't. Before I forget, we've got about 8 minutes left. If anyone's got a question for Fiona about becoming a sound engineer or anything she's ever done, just pop it in the comments. Is there anyone that is any project you would just be like, oh God, I really hope I end up doing something like that?
Oh, oh no, I should have thought about this before we spoke.
That's okay. You on the spot.
Dream gig.
I mean, do you like doing the things where we might have to come in for a week? If it's a big Hollywood film and we're there for 5 days, or and often it's projects which are just the day. Is it more worth sometimes you feel having a continuity of a 5 day project?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's a big budget Hollywood film. Does it sort of get a bit boring on day 3 or something?
That's a good question, because I think it does depend on the music, doesn't it? And I don't know this. I think what I love about my job is the variety of it, and I wouldn't want to be doing anything for too long, by which I mean like months. Do you know?
Yeah.
But the good
Okay.
thing about our engineering thing is, even if I'm doing an album, it's probably only a few weeks.
Yeah.
It's
Of you. Yeah.
like a really quick turnaround, and then I'll be on to, as you say, like something that has to be done, recorded in a day and mixed in 2, and then um, I guess on the big Hollywood films, it's, in a way, you kind of get more comfortable because it's all set up and it's touch wood.
Yeah. Everything's in the same place for the week.
Yeah, so there's a bit more adrenaline on the one dayers where
You have to get it in the bag. Yeah, I suppose
yeah,
when we're doing a long film project, if we're one behind, one little section behind after the first day, no one's massively panicking, because chances are we'll be able to catch up. But when it's a 1 day wonder, somebody's album or something, you kind of, the element of like, God, we've really actually got to nail this, especially if there's like computer computer failures or any
yeah,
point stuff. But I always think, gosh, you could be going into the studio and, as you say, recording a video game, and the day before was like somebody's classical, cello and orchestra album,
yeah.
or the before that something, pop band. It must be so fantastically diverse for you.
Exactly, yeah. I mean, I'm so lucky that I've already kind of worked with some of my heroes and done a lot of gigs that I've absolutely loved. So just more of the same, please. Can I
Yeah.
keep working with all these lovely people?
And do you have you got projects lined up? Because it's the moment that I suppose we're all looking to see what's happening at, say, Abbey Road and at Air, and seeing how it's all been worked. I've looked very extensively at all the pictures of the studios from above to see, you know, gosh, how's that going to work? And do you think it's just workable for the future for the moment?
Yeah, I actually think it's working really well, and it would be interesting to see how it would be sonically for like an action film with a lot of like shorts, you know, because everyone's very spread out. And I did feel it took a while to kind of for people to stop reacting to the person next to them and to just listen to the click, if you know what I mean, because you're used to sort of behaving as a body.
Yeah.
Doing that when everyone's spread out has this kind of slightly off, like that effect. So
it's not quite the same, because you do have an element of the whole orchestra feeling, which I know because we say the LSO group of us recorded something, we all had the same click, but even putting it together was not that easy, because at home we all had an element of our own version of the click in our minds.
Exactly.
But when you're sitting together as a group, there's a corporate feeling of being one. I just want to get to the retro fixed bands question. I have a question for Fiona. Do the composers hang out with you in the control room while you're recording, and can it be challenging to deal with egos?
Yes.
Right, you've got 4 minutes for this one.
They do hang out in the control room, and they're obviously kind of sitting next to you, producing it with you. And yeah, I think you just have to really judge. Some sessions just need someone that's like steadily running the ship and not saying much, because there are other big egos, you know, doing their thing, and you just have to keep everything working and kind of quietly be awesome. And then some people want a bit more input and direction and collaboration, so I guess that's what I try to do, judge.
Oh, that's a very diplomatic answer. That's brilliant. Yeah, I can imagine that, you know, and there are some massive personalities.
Yeah,
of course, who...
it's not just the composer, as we said. It's like composer, director, could be the orchestrator, could be the music editor who's been on it for months and has a big vision for it, you know. So yeah, there can be.
They're sort of saying, oh, and we're Skyping from LA because blah blah wants to watch in as well, and you're having to wait because it's like everybody needs to get their sort of their opinions.
And yeah, it's trying to sort of protect you from that a bit as well. I mean, the musicians, like, I want to form all of our opinions into something clear and then pass it on to you as a note, rather than 5 people going.
Yeah, you get all these differing sort of information, and you're like, what? No, you do an absolutely great job. It's been such a pleasure to talk to you.
So nice to see you.
And actually to learn a bit about what you're doing. I mean, I know what you're doing is fantastic in the box, but to actually break it down and have a real understanding of it is fantastic. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you for asking me.
And I really hope I'll see you properly back in the studio, and it won't be a case of you having, you know, us sitting up the glass going, hello. So,
and if anyone has any questions, just send me a message.
Oh, so do follow Fiona, and I really hope to see you soon. Stay safe. I'm really glad we were colour matching today. That's it's a blue day. Take care of yourself.
Do love. See you soon.
Bye.